Okay, we're running. Okay. Paul Cale, welcome to Brett Russell Chats.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the chat.
Thanks, mate. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, mate, you're a former Australian Special Forces Commando, served in Afghanistan and Iraq. You're a team leader of the anti-terror unit, the tag team. You're a head coach of the ADF, Australian Defence Force Martial Arts Association. You also worked with the Australian Institute of Sport for SF selection and the fitness regimes in that. And recently, you're the CEO of the Kinetic Fighting Martial Arts Association. And obviously, that's encompassing all your martial art prowess of jiu-jitsu, karate, kudo, and also army combatives. So, and on top of all that, the icing on the cake on that is on top of all that, you're still working and going hard, standing up for Australian war veterans recently. And mate, what an amazing career you have had and are still having. And mate, it's an honour to have you on Brett Russell Chats today. It's you've done amazing things in your life. And first of all, martial arts must be a big part of your life, and I know it is. What got you into martial arts?
Well, it was the Bruce Lee films. Simple as that, which I like. Guess a lot of people of my era. That's the thing that sort of caught our attention, and in school I suffered from bullying. I had the big curly hair with the thick glasses, and so I thought, well, watch this little powerhouse kicking everyone around, and I just thought, well, I need to learn martial arts. And back in the late 70s, early 80s, you don't have choice like you do today. So it wasn't like, and you also, the awareness of martial arts is nothing like it is today. So the local school was a taekwondo school, which I didn't know what taekwondo was. I just heard it was Korean karate, and off I went. But basically, I guess whatever I found, it was kung fu karate, I would have just started doing it. So that's how I started.
Excellent. Actually, very similar to my story. Actually, I was I'm probably a little younger than yourself, but I'm 52 now. But I similar sort of thing. I grew up in southwest Sydney, so it was a bit rough and ready. And I thought, I've got to do some self protection. I was always a shorter guy at school, and taekwondo was my thing. So I started off doing re-taekwondo in southwest Sydney, and same sort of thing. I started in 1980, but it was. What's do you think martial arts has changed since that time? I mean, I've got my perception of that, but do you think martial arts has sort of changed since the late 70s and 80s era of martial arts in Australia? Or
absolutely it has.
Yeah.
But I also think it's natural, and I actually, when I investigate the history of martial arts and so on, I basically you can see that it's always evolved and it's always changed.
That's
so right. I think traditions are basically what are we doing today.
Yes.
Representing the past rather than we've always done it this way.
Yes.
So I think it's always evolving, and I think it's always has to look for relevance in the world that it's in.
Yes.
Each generation.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's I mean, it's one of those things where, as you said, I think it represents the time that it's in, and that's the great thing about it. And it's I know with some of the Shaolin masters, they have a bit of a joke, and they sort of say, I know the monks sort of laugh at, we wear sort of the gis, or the whatever. And I said to my sifu once, I said, do you guys, and he said, oh, you just wear normal clothes, because back in the 1600s, they weren't wearing what the 1400s are wearing. So it was also of that day, but obviously we do it now as a tradition, but in that sense. But I think you are right. I think the pure essence of it is it keeps up with time and all that sort of stuff. And with that, obviously, I know that you've covered various martial arts. From Taekwondo, how did you lead into, say, Jiu-Jitsu or into karate? What was the next progression of that story? How did that work?
For me, it was judo was next, which would have been about 83 or 84, something like that. Yeah. Maybe earlier, I think, because I started Aikido in 84. So what I guess basically for me, clubs were how martial arts were taught back then.
Yes.
And, we heard about the Americans and these full-time studios, as time went on and so on. Yeah. But it was nothing like today. And so you had two nights a week, and I just loved martial arts. So I just wanted to train all the time. So I did the awful thing of finding another martial art that trained in the, alternate nights. And kept it a secret, because back then, we were very tribal, and we had to, cross training wasn't a thing. So I just cross trained, not because I thought it was a good idea, except for the fact that I did know back then that I wanted to learn a throwing art and a striking art, mostly for my ability to learn it. I thought if I learned two striking arts that were similar, it would be too confusing, and same as with the grappling. So I've always tried to do grappling and a striking art when I was training at the same time. And then I progressed to different arts, either based on moving, like joining the army and being in different locations and what was available.
Yes.
And the other one was when I, if I wanted to compete, or I would fight someone, or at a dojo, I would very happy to go to dojos and turn up with a gi on and just be willing to train, not realizing that some schools saw that as a bit of an affront. So I was naive. I just thought, let's train. And then if I, not so much if I got a flogging, if it was to and fro, no problems. If I knew what was going on, I didn't have the skill sets, no problem. But if I did something and they did something I hadn't seen before, and back then, no YouTube or any internet type stuff, it's just books that you read and so on.
Yes.
So, like for instance, when people started leg kicking the hell out of me, I'm like, what's this leg kicking we're doing? And so, well, this is Kyokushin. Oh, okay, no worries. Well, I need to learn this because it's working really well.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then how I found, I just go find a school, and then I think, oh, well, I want to compete. And back then, Sam Greco Sensei was the heavyweight champion of Australia and so on. I thought, well, I better. Well, he was Kyokushin before that. So he started Kyokushin, like many of those in Sado Kaikan. And so I thought, well, I better go train, and quickly realized why he's the Australian champion, and then decided that I'm going to learn. So I always just what's available where I'm living, and then the next thing was where can I go that I'm going to be learning something. So as soon as somebody showed me that I lacked a understanding of something, like leg kicking, then that's it. I take up that martial art, and and later on it became Sado Kaikan because of K1 and Sosoyama's decree for all the kickboxers, so they had to leave to fight K1 or just focus on Kyokushin knockdown. And so that's it. And then that's when I started discovering all of the other variants of Kyokushin, the Ashiharas, the Sabaki, and then I was very interested in that because it led to my Aikido understanding of Sabaki and so on and so on. So that's sort of how it evolved.
Yeah, no. I must admit, I mean, from the Taekwondo days when I was doing that as a kid and into my teenage years and sort of would have been late teenage years, Kyokushin was it was always renowned. We as you said, there was you'd go to different clubs, and I had friends that would train in Kyokushin, and they'd come to Taekwondo, and we'd go over there, and we'd just be, we were obviously black belts at that stage, and we'd be sort of cross sparring, and I just remember it was good fun, but the respect we had, I know as Taekwondo practitioners back then for Kyokushin karate, it didn't really matter what style, who the instructors were or where it was. It was known as good hard style. I remember Mr. Ree always praised Kyokushin. It was hard style, and it was good, and it was as you said, it was probably different certainly back then, certainly now, running martial arts schools, probably yourself and I do. Back then, it just seemed there was no one cared about insurance. It was just,
No.
it was just, you just go to a school hall or wherever it was, or a club, and you'd respectfully have hard sparring, and it was there was some sort of honor or code, but it was it was fine to sort of cop a hit and learn a lesson, or vice versa, and it was just part of, and you made good friends out of that, which was probably, I don't know if it's unusual for today, but it was sort of the way it was back then, I suppose, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And even Taekwondo, I mean, I guess people have come to realize by looking at Taekwondo in the 80s, as well as, I guess what Joe Rogan has shown and spoken about the early Taekwondo days. But it was hard contact sparring.
Yeah.
There was no leg kicks, so that was hence the interest with Kyokushin for me. But as far as hitting each other and stuff like that, that was normal. It was nothing like what you see with the sport today, which has sort of become foot tag, which is a shame. It's a shame, but it's one of the problems we have when you let a sport define the martial art.
Yes.
Or the lack of sport to define the martial art. It's a shame.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Paul, that leads me into, how'd you get into the army? You joining the army?
It was just a follow-on for martial arts for me. It was okay. Well, what's the modern martial art? What's the modern take? So that was really the real reason. I mean, and also the discipline, because I had gotten into the Japanese martial arts, and I really, it's really resonated with me. And so I stayed with the Japanese art. So then I started, though I looked around and did different things. I did do some Filipino stuff, and I did a little bit of Wing Chun Kung Fu, but not enough to mention, as or graded in or anything like that. So the Japanese arts is where I sat, and the discipline of the army and everything just sort of fitted that same model with me, so it was no problem.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? It's that discipline structure, and it's how it works. And with that, mate, did you go? Obviously, we know that you ended up in the Commandos. Is that what you went straight into? Is that
no? You couldn't join straight in, but you either came from a different unit, or you, back then there was a sort of an initial employment, I think, that reservists did, that you could join, but you had to go through the whole infantry process, but you were earmarked for the commando unit if you could pass the selection.
Okay.
So they had the regular commando sort of took on the same system, where today they have a program that they check your aptitude and so forth, and if you have that, you can join, but you have to go through this accelerated sort of infantry program, and work and still pass selection. So it's pretty much like a program for civilians, but you have to meet the requirements before you join, and then if you don't pass selection, you're in the army doing what you're doing. It's a similar sort of thing to the US Navy SEALs in a way, because a
lot
of people want to join the US Navy to be a SEAL, and the US Navy would love to have lots of people join, and when they don't make the cut, they've got sailors doing something else. So
yes,
it's a good recruiting tool, I guess.
Like be a SEAL, but you could we'll throw you into this other stuff as well. So
so I joined the regular army in 1987, and I went to the infantry corps. I went to the 1st Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment, which was in Townsville, which is at that stage I'd started doing Aikikai in 1984. I started Aikikai. Started Aikido, and then that's when I came across, I looked for Aikido school in Townsville, and I came across the Yoshinkan style, which was being taught by a Japanese 6th degree black belt who couldn't speak English very well at all, but was brought to Australia by a wealthy solicitor who wanted to learn Aikido. And so he started a school, and I got stuck into it. And
Fantastic.
Around that time, so they're the links, I guess.
Yeah.
Also, I started karate in 1987 with my current karate teacher as well.
Okay. So it was a big time in your life: military, karate, and Aikido. Yeah. So that's all. And obviously, did that sort of yearn and want to get into special forces push you from a martial arts end, or was it? Did you know you wanted to go that path when you first went in, or did it just sort of?
I didn't really know much about it when I first joined the army. I just knew I wanted to join the army.
Okay.
And then once I was at Kapuka and saw all of the paraphernalia and the stories about the SAS and so on, then I decided I wanted to go to special forces then.
Yeah. Okay. And what was that journey like for you? How did that was the selection? Do you find it easy? And obviously, going into the special forces selection, was that easy?
I didn't go straight into selection. So, in actual fact, what happened was I was in Townsville, and when you're young, you just don't see the world like it's your view's much narrower. Of what's going on around you. So, for example, I knew what a PTI was, a physical training instructor, because they beast you at basic training and initial employment training. And back then, they were part of the artillery corps when I first joined, so they were called bombardier, not corporal.
Okay.
And so you'd always, take a hiding for calling them corporal. And then it changed, and I think it was 88. They ended up being part of the health corps.
Okay.
And so they still ran the training at the School of Artillery. But anyway, regardless, I saw a guy kicking around the battalion in his shorts and singlet, PTI, subunit PTI, and I thought that's a great job for Townsville.
Yeah.
So not knowing, really what I wanted to do, I just put my hand up to become a PTI.
Okay.
And I was laughed at and knocked back, but it got sent up anyway. My boss sent it and said, "No, because I was a nobody in the battalion."
Yeah.
At that stage, and as he sent it up, the PTI of the subunit PTI, our battalion PTI, the system was different back then, and he got picked up by corps. So you would do your sub 4 for PTI, become a full corporal, and then go to corps if you were recommended. So they had a gap, they had a vacancy, and that came in just as that vacancy happened. So the CO just went, "Yeah, great, send Private Cale," and so it came back with, "Yeah, you're going," which surprised everyone.
Yeah.
And it just was a timing thing. So
good timing. Good timing.
Yeah, off to the School of Artillery I went at Manly.
Nice.
And did 3 months of getting smashed, but I passed the course, which was back then it was one of the toughest courses in the army. So it was great preparation for my subject courses and great preparation for selection.
Okay.
Because back then, PTIs, you had to pass the course, and we would have, I would say it was about a 30% failure rate. So there was like serious failing going on. And then there was those who passed, you had about 10%, the top 10% recommended for core. So
Okay.
they basically graded you. And that was done through gymnastics, a whole range of different things, the way you delivered your lessons, your lesson plans, and so on.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky enough to have passed and get recommended for core. So
Awesome.
I was just going down the line of becoming a PTI. But
Yeah.
after a year of doing that, I thought, no, I still want to go to Special Forces. So I went back to the infantry companies and basically didn't accept my sub 4 for corporal to be a PTI.
Yeah.
Experienced it in the battalion for a year and enjoyed it. And whilst I was in the battalion, I was running the pre-selection testing that the SAS requires, which
okay.
any PTI can run.
Yeah.
And I was involved in that for, my friends from the battalion and so on. And I just thought, wow. And then a bunch of them came back from selection. They were successful. And
Wow.
I worked with them on their training for selection and everything. So I thought to myself, I should do that. But
Yeah.
my re-enlistment date was coming up, and back then you signed up for 3 or 6 years at a time.
Yep.
And my wife didn't want me to re-enlist, so I actually left the army then. And
Okay.
and we had an agreement that if I got out, mind you, it was the worst time in the world to get out, which was the stock market crash of 87. So
yeah.
but
Jeez.
we had an agreement that I would be able to go to Japan to follow my studies in the martial arts. Yes. So that's sort of what led to that. And when I got back, the country was in a very bad state back then, which is why, defence had poor funding and what have you.
Yeah.
But the Victoria Police Force was also very bad off. So I thought, well, when I got back, I thought I should join the police.
Okay.
And they literally closed the police academy down. So they had such a lack of funding.
No way.
The police academy was closed down. So my I guess my forms is basically we got a letter back saying that it's all been scrapped, and when the academy reopens, you have to reapply. Wow. And at that stage, it was my wife. After the academy reopened, I started teaching martial arts to make some money, as well as working, in the picking fruit and what have you. Yeah. And so she took on her application and got in. So that's sort of how that swung around. Yeah. And then I heard there was a reserve commando unit opening up out my way, and I checked it out, and there was some incredibly interesting people from various backgrounds, including British SAS and all over the place, a lot of ex-regular guys and so on. And I really enjoyed the vibe. So that's how I got involved with Special Forces. And then later on, so, and then later on, I got back into the regular army.
Okay. You re-enlist, so re-enlist.
Yeah, I actually got out of the army completely, so I left the reserves for a while as well.
Wow.
And then when Timor kicked off, I thought, well, I should look at re-enlisting. They said, no, you've been out too long.
Yeah.
And then I went, okay, well, so be it. You have to go back further and that. And I wasn't too interested in that.
Yeah.
And then after 9/11, I just thought, I have to go back to the army. But before that, I had been involved with a unit, reserve unit, helping out, and they asked me to become one of their officers. So I thought, if I have to re-enlist, I may as well become an officer and not redo recruit training, and may as well do that.
Yeah.
But after 9/11, I was given the opportunity to go straight back to Commandos. So I just took that and went straight back to Commandos. And then I got asked to be the subject matter expert for unarmed combat development in Canberra. And at that stage, I was a commando sergeant. And by the time I got to Canberra, they said there's a critical trade shortage for commando sergeants. And that's how I ended up at 4 Commando, which later on became the 2nd Commando Regiment.
That's right, because that was the original name. Okay, yeah. So, mate, what? I mean, that's incredible. I mean, did that sort of, was all that a bit of a blur, or was it sort of a more up and down rocky road? At that
point? No. It was a well and truly experienced moments. There's nothing easy about any of it, and it was a roundabout way of being, of getting to the unit, but it was all just, it was, I won't say fake, but when you look back on it, it feels like fake, but it's more knowing broadly what I would want to achieve.
Yes.
And the broader I understand that, the greater opportunities you have in achieving it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've realized. Nothing is direct. There's nothing that's just, I want to go this to here to there.
No.
It tends to be a roundabout way, and you get setbacks, and you get told no, and so on, and basically you just sort of keep on that path, and I guess, and that sort of, you find yourself there in the end.
Yeah. No, it's mate, that's incredible. I mean, I know my family has a big history in the military. My uncle was actually one of my uncles was a colonel in artillery at Manly, John Russell, and
what years were that?
He was in the 80s.
If he was 88, I probably would have given him a salute as I walked past him. Yeah.
And my other uncle, his brother was actually these are my dad's brothers. He was in Vietnam in the SASR. So and he stayed in for quite a while in the 80s, and then got out. But I think he was the original Phantoms of the Jungle. So that was his group, and he was a bit of a legend. And
that's
sorry, mate.
That's exactly, they're the people that were at One Commando when I went there. So Captain O'Farrell, I think Captain at the time, or Major Hans Flair, like they're legends of SASR and the Commando world of Australian Special Forces. Well, they were literally my subunit. Like they were literally right there learning from them, and that's why it was such an amazing thing. And then had an Ian Townsley from 22 SAS, and it was just an amazing group of mentors.
Yes.
That as a young soldier, it was an incredibly good time of learning from these war veterans from Vietnam who it was a very, very informative time of my life, and it really did set me up. Played a big part on the person I am today.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, mate. That's awesome. And from there into war, mate, you obviously after 9/11 it was Afghanistan. It was on. I mean, all of us were probably had our eyes glued to the TV that day that changed the world. Probably that where we saw the planes go in and things change. Obviously, Australia was part of the group to go into Afghanistan, and you were there. You were in. How was that for you going in from there?
Yeah, I was in Afghanistan 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010.
Wow.
And I also went to Iraq in 2009, and also I did a counterterrorism stint in that 4 years as well. So that was the busiest 4 years of my life, and
I could imagine.
It was a very odd time because the rotations were so like just one after the other, and it was an experience that I appreciated.
Yeah.
But it was there was some really, really good kids that were killed, who were really, really special Australians.
Yeah.
So that's disappointing, to say the least. But at the time, it was just it was a very odd time. So you know, it was life and death was something that you thought about. It was you were losing good friends all the time, and for
Wow.
those that didn't die, there was so many more wounded that were losing
Yeah.
their legs, their arms, and what have you.
Yeah.
So it was a tough period because everyone's sort of young,
Yes.
and people around you are dying. So it's a very different world to, I guess, what the average citizen experiences. And to be in Afghanistan, you see that just with the general population. You know, they don't have the medical resources,
Yes.
so people die, and family groups are together, and family groups bury their dead, and
Wow.
you know, they're aware of their mortality, and it does create for a very different mindset when
Yes.
when your mortality is in your face daily.
Yeah. Yeah. And mate, did that? I mean, moving forward on that, obviously that affected you as a person, no doubt, in the way that you think and worked in the military. Did that change the way that you thought about things within the military and how it worked, or
Not so much the military.
as a
I
person?
was, I think everything we did is exactly as we trained,
Yeah.
and if things didn't work out for us, we were very quick in adapting.
Yeah.
So anytime we lost someone, we would review and learn from that loss, because you know, obviously, that we want to avoid that at you know, as much as you can, as much as
Yeah.
you reasonably can, without compromising obviously the mission set.
Yeah.
Um, so we would adapt, and that's something that I was really proud of with the unit. The unit was very fast in adapting, and um, realizing any shortfalls, and it led to a rapid growth of the unit. You know, the unit matured. I mean, it was an incredible environment. We were born, the Second Commando Regiment, you know, was born in 2009,
Yes.
right in the middle of that period for me of my time, with the fighting, and it was, you know, just like the original Australian Commandos, born in the middle during World War II, and
That's
it just it. It matured the unit in a very positive way, because it was forged in actual warfare, you know, and
yeah.
our experiences were based on our personal experience in fighting the enemy. And
Yes.
that's what people come into the unit like, you know, back then, if you didn't have a deployment, it was because you were just new to the unit. So
Okay.
it's, you know, to
Yeah.
have everyone in your platoon have already been on deployments, having everyone in your instructors are all veterans. Um, yeah,
That's a
I
rare
think it was
thing.
an interesting time for new commandos too.
Yeah. Yeah. No. 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 It's I must say I knew quite a few Second Commando Regiment guys. I was training a few of them, and some of them became good friends of mine, and still are to this day. And one Commando Regiment from Randwick as well in Sydney. I was also involved in some of that aspect there. And mate, as you said, unbelievable men, and just top blokes. And as you said, they all get the job done. You guys did it, and just fight another day, and just top guys, top blokes. I couldn't say anything better about these guys. Just amazing men, mate. Amazing men. And yeah, unfortunately, I knew of some guys that um, didn't come back, and it was a tough thing. But as you said, adapt and learn, and you conquered in the end. So that it's an amazing story, amazing journey, man. It's incredible, incredible. And that leads me to your stuff with tag, the is it the terror unit?
It's a tactical assault group.
Yeah, assault group.
As it was, yeah.
I was sort of involved with training some of those guys from a martial perspective. How'd you get into that? And was that post war stuff, or is it during?
No, it was during.
Wow.
So what happened was, as our commando was growing, our commanding officer at the time decided that everybody, we used to have a selection process for the tactical assault group.
Yeah.
He decided that if the commando capability was to progress, then every commando needed to meet the standards of the tactical assault group, which would make us a world class, or as the Americans called, tiering system, like a tier 1 direct action unit. Yeah. So that's what he did, and he decreed that you were to pass the advanced close quarter battle, as it was called back then.
Yeah.
Or you were to be, leave the unit. And there were people that didn't make the cut and had to leave the unit, and the rest of us moved into the new cycle. And then that led into 2009 becoming a regiment within, our own regiment within SOCOM. But that's what happened there. So because of that, you do the training, and I was sent to Charlie Company, which was the original Tactical Assault Group East, and that was the trickle company where people would be sent. And I was sent there because I was a sergeant to learn about the assault group with Charlie Company, with the guys who have been on team, for a long time, and they rotate. And it was incredible experience. It was a steep learning curve. But it was, again, it's my favorite job in the Army. Like, because it's so time pressured and so demanding on being perfect, I just really enjoyed that job. And I had the opportunity to be with Echo Alpha, which is the emergency action commander, and work my way through different team commander positions. And before that, within Charlie Company, I got to be a digger, basically, just learning the different jobs. So learning my demolitions, driving, and all these different things, and then working on being a team commander and working my way up. And it was just incredibly good experience, and mentored by some very, very good people. Some of who would later be killed in action in Afghanistan, sadly. But it was a great experience. And again, it was just, for me, it was all of that 4 years was so incredibly full on. So even when we finished the tactical assault group, at that stage we started rotating companies. So I was in Charlie Company, which was the trickle company. That was the tag, and then I stayed with the tag when it rotated to Delta Company, and that was the first full company rotation, which is now referred to as squadrons. But that was the first full rotation, and then I stayed on with Delta Company as the emergency action commander, and it was an incredibly good year. And at the end of that year, we deployed straight to Afghanistan as a unit. So it was fantastic as far as lead up training and preparation.
No, that's amazing, mate. Because you were the team commander on that. You were the lead commander. Is that correct? You were the lead commander of the TAG East.
No, so they have it has a company commander. And so on, just like any other company. But it's very different compared to the rest of the Army, in that whatever the job is, the command switches.
Okay.
So I was the emergency action commander and actually led 2 company assaults. training assaults, because the emergency action commander runs the entire group during the battle. So if that action goes ahead, you're running the show. If it doesn't, it rotates. So it's kind of like, the best way to describe it is that, like, let's say we have to exit an aircraft and get to the water with our boats and what have you. Then the guys in charge of the aircraft, the back end of the aircraft, the parachute jump masters and that, who are non-commissioned officers, they'll run the whole show. The boss is like, well, this is what I want to achieve, and then they work out how to achieve it. Back brief, he says, let's execute. And then you hit the water, and then it's the amphibious guys who take charge. And then if you were to scale a cliff, then it'll be the climbers and the lead climbers and so on taking charge. It constantly moves with the job that's being done, with the boss overseeing based on what he wants to achieve as an effect. So that's a
really good method. I mean, it's amazing. No, it's really good. I was blessed to do some stuff with the SOTG stuff, guys, and I did like some climb stuff and some ballistics, and it was an amazing thing. But I actually got to, just what you were saying, then I got to actually see it firsthand, because it was, as you said, the climbers, they do the climbing stuff, then ballistics, the ballistic stuff, and then it would just go along. So that was, I know, I sort of understand now exactly what you're saying. It's amazing, mate, amazing stuff. And now that leads to then into your martial arts stuff, which was you became sort of working with the head of the Australian Defence Force Martial Arts Association. How did that come about? And were you always involved with that association right through your
military? It was a fairly new thing. So we didn't have martial arts in the army when I first joined. So really, my whole time in the army has always been working to advocate for martial arts. Now, we had unarmed combat.
Awesome.
We had unarmed combat, but it was limited to, it was a course, and it couldn't cater for the army. So I was always sort of advocating for that. And when I was young, like when I was training, if I turned up with bruises and that, I'd be told by the boss that you're not going to be allowed to keep training if you're getting injured in that. We don't want you injured. And there was no free sparring or anything. We used to have boxing. And what happened was a young fella from 3RAR died in a boxing match. And because of that, it was banned, and it was all form of contact sports, martial arts stuff was, besides rugby, was frowned upon. However, what happened was, we didn't understand, brain injury like we do today. And what happened was, he was actually concussed in a rugby match in the week prior, and during the training for boxing, he was concussed again, and then he boxed. So that we know these things now, whereas back then we just didn't know, or it was, or the ability to know was very limited. When you don't have access to the information, So that's the other thing. So now we know why, but still, the Defence Force, based still on that event, will not, allow striking or anything like that. So therefore, the grappling became the thing. Which, also when we looked into the evidence, originally for the US through their program, I got to work with the US Marines with the MARSOC program, and with some of the lead contractors in the involvement of creating that, the Hunter Armstrongs of the world and so on. And then the US Army looked at what the Ranger Regiment put together initially, and which grew into the combatives program for the entire army. And so that's how we went, and we sort of went down a similar line. I mean, I had a background in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, which I took up in 1994
Yes.
when Jean-Jacques Machado first came to Australia.
Yeah.
But also I was, so by the time we got around to it, I had that background, and we sort of, I guess, went down a similar line to the Americans when it came to just rolling and free training and things like that, and sort of leant on the jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I think that when I look at the original documents and that, the US Army was actually leaning towards Sambo. They wanted the
Okay.
full gambit, but they lacked the instructors in the US, that enough instructors to achieve that. So they went with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
And it was easy for us to sort of follow that line.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, and then obviously after my own experience in 2007,
Yes.
that sort of changed my mindset. I mean,
That.
at that stage, yeah, so I had a hand-to-hand sort of fight with Taliban commander, and I kind of thought to myself, like, it just felt incredibly difficult,
Yes.
and I thought to myself, I've got decades of training, which back then I still had a couple of decades under my belt.
Yeah.
And I just thought, we do this for 1 week. How are we preparing soldiers for this?
Yes.
They need to be armed with a blade. We need to fight in groups,
Yeah.
especially against an enemy where it's a cultural thing that they do martial arts. And
Yes.
that's what led to the modern program we see today, was that experience where I realized I've got to practice accessing my firearm at close quarters. And then in 2010, I actually went to the US and showed the United States SEALs and US Special Forces, who then sent instructors to train with me, all
Yeah.
of the close shooting stuff that has become a big part of what you see these days.
That's
And I
great.
know it might sound like a big thing to claim that I did that, but I own the intellectual property of that as well.
That's,
So
mate, that's
yeah,
amazing. I mean, I mean, I did hear, obviously, you obviously took them on in an unarmed aspect and won, and that's what it's all about. It's about winning the fight, and you did that. You survived, and mate, for you, not only doing that, but also then imparting that knowledge and that experience. That's what it's all about. It's
yeah. Well,
that's
just so you know, I wasn't unarmed at the time, because obviously it's way better to fight with weapons.
with weapons. Yeah.
But it was because of pavement and so on. You couldn't guarantee, because they had jumped one of our soldiers. We were rolling around in the dark,
Okay.
and it was unsafe to fire
Yes.
a firearm. Like, you couldn't guarantee who you were shooting.
Yeah.
So and at the stage I didn't have a knife on me, which I would have gone to.
Yeah.
Which later on I absolutely would go to my knife, but I didn't have one on me, so that's how I ended up hands-on. So
Okay.
a lot of people will be thinking, how do you end up unarmed on a battlefield? But
Yeah.
you've got
It's
to,
close
just like
proximity.
on a range, just like
Yeah.
on a range,
Yeah.
just imagine a range safety officer, and you're going to go, okay, what we're going to do is turn the lights off, all jump together with these guns, and then roll around. Let's
Yeah.
give that a go.
Yeah.
And you realize that, if you're not mindful,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
and you're not aware of your firearms, you're going to get your own people killed.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that we didn't go live. Well, I didn't shoot the firearm.
Yeah. No. It's mate, that's an incredible story, and obviously that led you to obviously the Australian Defence Force Martial Arts Association. And mate, I mean, I'm just listening to this, and it's just an incredible story, really. And I mean, you're a humble guy, and it's incredible. I really like Australian forces, particularly special forces, and everyone I know in them. Everyone is so humble. They just get in, do the job, and mate, you're one of those guys. Incredible person, and just with incredible knowledge that you're just getting it out there and teaching people, which is amazing. And Now that obviously that's Army combatives that you're teaching as well in that as well, and that leads me to the next thing of now you're standing up for Australian war veterans, and I found this out just recently. And mate, can you tell me about that and that journey that you've had just recently with that, and what's been happening?
Well, I can give you the information that we're working through at the moment, and down the track there will be a lot more that comes out. But hopefully we can get this resolved. But basically, whilst working last year, I was asked to expand our capability in working with defence. So we had we're working at School of Infantry. First time that contractors were involved in the Army combatives and shooting and so forth. And we had to jump through an incredible amount of hoops to achieve that. Then we were asked to expand that capability for defence right up till Christmas, which has cost us a substantial amount of money. We had to find ranges to develop our instructors overseas and set up overseas. Because you just couldn't facilitate in Australia. Not until, if the program expanded and so on, there would probably be the ability to do it in Australia in a restricted way. But anyway, for what we had to achieve, and then at Christmas time, they basically walked away from it. Now, no, I'm not kidding at all. So we challenged that because obviously there's an immense cost to it and a lot of investors and so on involved. And also I had veterans literally had left their jobs and were moving to the location to live, to do the work that was asked of us. Anyway, I thought it was pretty bad. And personally, I can deal with loss, but I can't sit back and let what's happened to our investors and our veterans that are working for me. I just won't accept it. So I've been fighting to have it rectified, but basically my solicitor took on King's Counsel to investigate, which we spent 4 months, because defence said to me, hey, if you can prove that you're in contract, if we are at fault, we will have to pay. Which we were told at the time during a meeting with myself and a couple of witnesses. And anyway, King's Counsel investigated and was, I thought we'd been wrongly done by. He was actually scathing. So he's produced a 19-page document completely in our favour, with an immense amount of things that the Commonwealth has done wrong, has found an estoppel in our favour, with almost 400 pages of evidence.
That's amazing.
And I've received a letter from the Deputy Prime Minister saying that in June, saying Defence is working through a commercial resolution, but they totally failed to contact me after being given 2 months to look over King's Counsel's opinion. And so that's where I'm at now, which is the next step will be the High Court, as well as me publicly keeping everyone up to date with what's going on.
That's good.
Because I'm at that point now where, there's a saying, don't push a loyal person to the point where they no longer care. And I'm past the point of worrying about the Defence Force. I'm worried about the people who have given their lives, regardless of whether you've walked away with physical injuries. Everyone suffers mental injury, and to have put those, and I'm a fairly resilient person, and I put it down to my martial arts and that Budo and so on. But there are some veterans who are not well, and I'm worried about them, and all I can do is fight, and that's it. And I'm not. I consider myself, when it comes to politics, as part of the silent majority, and I'm going to be the beginning of no longer being silent.
Good. And we're for you, mate. All the martial arts community, we're behind you 100% on that. That's not a problem at all. I wish you all the best with that, and I'm sure it'll hopefully be a good outcome for everyone, including yourself and the veterans that are involved. So hopefully you'll get some joy with that. But mate, leading on to your the post military career business, you're the CEO now of Kinetic Fighting, and mate, that must be a great thing going into business, going into getting your own business happening, of course, and teaching and martial arts, and obviously all that other stuff, tying it all together. How do you find the world of business in martial arts, particularly?
Martial arts, good. I mean, I would say that before I re-enlisted, I probably had a bigger martial art presence and so on.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s or late 90s.
Yeah.
And you know, I guess I was heavily involved with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu back then as well, and
yeah,
I'm still involved today, but my interest is more probably Japanese Jiu-Jitsu.
Japanese Jiu-Jitsu
and those links. But the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and back then too, a lot of people just it was bizarre, you know, like the Gracie Challenge for some reason. Like I was, you know, your blue belts were pretty much some of the, you know, that's how we were learning was, you know, a blue belt, you're the one teaching.
Yeah.
And, you know, people would challenge you, come into the school, and it was bizarre. So it was kind of like, well, I'm not a Gracie. I don't know why I'm fighting, but I would find myself fighting people, trying to prove that no, grappling works. And then, you know, to see that turnaround where jiu-jitsu sort of just gone down the complete, you know, sporting side of things, where everyone's just interested in who submits who, which sounds fine. It sounds like real fighting, but when I see soldiers trying to leg lock each other, and I'm thinking, you're wearing GP boots, which are designed to protect your ankles.
Yeah.
And even if you break someone's leg, their leg isn't the issue. It's the firearm or knife that's in their hand.
Yes.
That frustrates me a bit. So that's nothing against leg locks. I mean, if you want to win grappling tournaments, obviously you're going to leverage off however you can use the rules to gain an upper hand.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the point system was the progression to a better position for striking and delivering strikes. And the points in Jiu-Jitsu were there for when you did a Jiu-Jitsu comp and you couldn't hit each other.
Yeah.
Because back then we only really cared about Vale Tudo, about no holds barred.
Yes.
No one really cared about fighting in a Jiu-Jitsu tournament. But then as Jiu-Jitsu became more known, it was more of a prestigious thing to win Jiu-Jitsu tournaments.
Yeah.
But now it's almost, you know, like, and again, there's a big difference between submission fighting and fighting someone who wants to kill you or you're killing them. So 100%. Battlefield, it's different. Self-defense is different again. Your mindset and what you're up to is different.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, Don Drager Sensei pretty much lays out the 4 end states of martial arts, being battlefield or self-defense or self-enlightenment or sport.
Yes.
You know, pretty and you can see that, you know, like what you're training for if you understand those end states. But the martial arts themselves tend to use sport to attract people, and in the army, we want to use sport to motivate soldiers to train in their own time.
Yes.
But this is where the rules of the sport are very important, because you want people competing in a way that it adds to the skill sets you want them to develop.
Yes.
So, you know, we want people to stay on their feet if possible, and we want people to know what it is to fight with plate on. So, we introduced the plate with rubber in it.
Yeah.
We want, but, you know, soldiers always have to remember there's more than one person and there's weapons in play. It needs to, you know, so you want that free play, but you want to not forget what you're training for.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that. So the grappling works fine with that.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, it's I know what you mean with that. I remember when I started training in Shaolin after Taekwondo, and the Shaolin monks. But back then it was old school. It wasn't like the more modern wushu stuff. It was like the old stuff back in the day and in the early '90s. And I remember my sifu said to me, he said, "Are you ready to fight?" And I'm like, yeah, in my Taekwondo stance, and he just kicked me in the groin. I dropped down. He's like, "No, you're not ready to fight." Yeah, and straight away I realized, wow, I've been fighting in a ruled system, not a non-ruled system, and obviously they're the old what they call Wu Yi, which is the old martial art, not the Wu Shu, but the Wu Yi aspect was anything goes, because in the battlefield in the old days, going back 1,000 years ago, that's they just kick you in the groin and off you go, or do whatever they need to do. And I remember back then it just changed my mindset. It completely changed my mindset of what fighting was. And it's up until that point, fighting was what we thought was pretty sort of full on, and you might get a bust nose or something, but it wasn't fighting as what maybe they thought in the Shaolin Temple or such, or whatever at that stage, in the Wu Yi aspect. But it's the same sort of thing as you said. It's different methods for different approaches, whether it be for sport, for self defense, for real life life and death stuff. It's all varied and different, but it's all good. But you need to know what you're doing with each one. So it's no, good stuff. No, it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Just understand what your own objectives are.
Yeah.
And your own reasoning. Like not everyone's going to do martial arts for a lifetime.
Yes.
Endeavor. They want something from it. If it's playing their game, they want to play until they no longer can play it and they stop. But that for me, that's the bit that's disappointing, because there's so much more to martial arts, and you want people to see that. But in the end, everyone makes their own decisions and they do their own thing.
Yeah.
But I think the leaders of martial arts today just need to understand what they're about and what their art's about, and if they want to see it flourish or exist even into the future, we have to adapt to, I guess, the needs of today.
Yes.
And clearly define what you're about.
Yeah.
So that people go, okay, I can see why you're doing what you're doing, and it may not suit me, but good luck to you. And there's a lot more that we have in common as martial artists than we have that there is different.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I think that's the big thing, is that it's for me, you realize, I suppose, from my journey, martial arts is about discovering yourself, and it's about really knowing yourself, warts and all. It's whether you like it, whether you don't like it, but you learn yourself, and it's like looking into a mirror. You see yourself, and every time you train, or every time you work through something, you're gaining, but you're also learning about yourself along that journey. So ultimately, certainly, I think all martial arts, it's enlightenment. We discover ourselves through that journey, and it's about enjoying the journey, not the destination as much, but just the journey of learning and discovery of whatever that is. But Paul, mate, to sort of sum it up, you're obviously continuing to be one of the big hitters of martial arts in the industry. I certainly see you as a forerunner of martial arts, and taking that to the fore. Your career in the military is profound and amazing. It's just, you've just done everything in that. And it's really an honour to sit here and listen to your story, mate, and well done in what you've achieved, but also what you're achieving in the future from now on. Just not in in regards to the martial arts, but also with the Australian war veterans stuff. That's amazing. I really think you're doing great things there. And as a martial artist and a career martial artist, it's awesome to speak to someone like yourself, who, in my mind, is sort of where I'm at. I'm as in thinking about martial arts, and it's great to connect and obviously to chew the fat, so to speak, about the industry and about what awesome things can happen in the future. So thank you for your time today, Paul. Thank you so much.
Most welcome. Most welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.